Today, we're talking about a guy you've probably heard 1,000 times, even if you never knew his name. A musician who didn't just play the beat, he completely rebuilt it from the ground up. Let's dive into the story of Sly Dunbar, the man who is truly the heartbeat of modern music.
Let's just start with this quote from the legendary producer Brian Eno, all the way back in 1979. It's a pretty wild claim, right? But it just perfectly nails the massive scale of Sly Dunbar's influence. He wasn't just a drummer in reggae. For decades, he pretty much was the sound of reggae drumming.
And trust me, Eno wasn't exaggerating. Seriously, the most conservative guesses put the number of tracks Sly Dunbar played on or produced at over 200,000. Just let that sink in for a second. That insane output makes him very likely the most recorded drummer of all time. His rhythm is literally baked into the DNA of popular music.
And that's why his recent passing on January 26, 2026, really feels like the end of a monumental era. Lowell Fillmore Sly Dunbar was 73. So in this explainer, we're going to honor his incredible life by breaking down the innovations that literally changed music forever.
So, where did it all start? Well, it began in Kingston, Jamaica, with a young kid who had this unstoppable sense of rhythm and who decided he was going to forge a brand new beat, not just for his island, but for the entire world.
Born in 1952, Sly's first drum kit wasn't some fancy setup. Nope, it was his school desk and a bunch of empty food cans. The rhythm was just so deep in him that by the time he was 13, he actually convinced his mom to let him drop out of school to chase the beat full time. Talk about a gamble, but man, did it pay off for all of us.
Okay, to really get Sly's genius, you have to understand the world he stepped into. Back in the 60s, Jamaican music was all about the ska beat, which was actually invented by Sly's own mentor, Lloyd Knibb. Then, in the early 70s, the famous one-drop rhythm, made popular by Bob Marley's drummer Carlton Barrett, completely took over. And then, Sly Dunbar showed up and changed the whole game.
So what was this one drop? Well, it was that classic, super relaxed reggae feel. The kick drum and the snare would hit together on the third beat of the bar, giving you that iconic, laid-back pulse that we all think of when we hear classic roots reggae. It was basically the law of the land.
But Sly, he came in with the rockers beat, and it was totally different. It was tighter, more aggressive, almost militant. Instead of that chill vibe, he used this hard, syncopated double tap on the rim of the snare. It created this driving forward momentum that just pushed the music. And this wasn't just some random musical choice. It kind of mirrored the growing political tension in Jamaica at the time, giving the music this urgent, powerful new edge.
And get this new beat was so revolutionary that when the song Right Time by the Mighty Diamonds came out, that double tap on the snare was so crisp and strange that people were convinced it had to be a studio sound effect. But it wasn't a machine, it was just Sly Dunbar.
That single innovation really laid the groundwork for the next, and maybe the most famous chapter of his career, the creation of one of the greatest rhythm sections in the history of music, period.
So in 1972, Sly met this bassist, Robbie Shakespeare, and the connection was just instant. It was almost telepathic. Sly's drums and Robbie's bass just locked together and became this single, unstoppable force. They were Sly and Robbie, the Rhythm Twins, and that partnership would last for almost half a century.
And their influence went global. I mean, just look at this list. They're the ones who powered Black Uhuru to the first ever Grammy for a reggae album. They were the absolute backbone of Grace Jones's iconic nightclubbing record, creating this whole new sound that blended reggae, disco, and new wave. They even gave Bob Dylan a modern pulse on his album In Fiddles. From Peter Tosh to the Rolling Stones, everyone wanted the Rhythm Twins.
But here's the thing. Sly wasn't just content with mastering acoustic drums. What made him a true giant was his vision. See, he wasn't a purist, he was a futurist. He saw the next revolution coming and decided he was going to lead the charge.
So in the 80s, drum machines show up, and a lot of drummers were terrified. They saw them as a threat, like they were going to lose their jobs. But not Sly. He was fascinated. He totally embraced the new technology, started mixing in electronic Simmons drum pads with his regular kit, and began programming beats that pushed Jamaican music straight into the digital age. A perfect example of this is how he created one of the most iconic rhythms of all time, Bam Bam. He started with a simple little guitar loop. Then he programmed a beat on a drum machine that was actually influenced by Indian tabla drums. And then came the genius move. He took the bass line completely out. This stripped-down digital rhythm became the blueprint for countless dancehall hits, most famously Murder, She Wrote.
And his willingness to just experiment, it had this massive ripple effect way beyond Jamaica. These digital ideas became foundational not just for dancehall, but for hip-hop, for funk, and even for the global pop and reggaeton that we all hear today. He basically helped write the code for the modern beat.
So as we come to the end of his story, let's take a look at his final years and just reflect on the legacy of a man who was so often heard, but so rarely seen. You know, the final chapter was bittersweet. He lost his musical brother, Robbie Shakespeare, in late 2021, and that was a huge blow. But he kept creating. He released a final album in July 2025, received a Lifetime Achievement Award, and then he passed away peacefully in January 2026.
So what is the legacy of Sly Dunbar? When you boil it all down, he was a rhythmic innovator who gave reggae its militant edge, a digital pioneer who helped birth dancehall, a global collaborator trusted by the biggest legends in the business, and really, he was the relentless heartbeat of Jamaican music for more than 50 years.
And that leaves us with one last thought. When you think about how his work has been sampled and copied and remixed hundreds of thousands of times, his influence is just everywhere. So the real question isn't whether you've heard Sly Dunbar. It's how many times today have you unknowingly moved to a beat that he built.